talking about midlife, or as I am calling it at the moment, because I don't really buy into the narrative that we've been sold over the years, and that's what I want to talk a little bit about. A lot of people are talking about midlife, and we're talking about all the health issues that many of us experience or how to prevent them. So I don't know where this is going to go, to be honest. But it feels like the great cosmic twist. So let's be honest. This isn't the midlife that we're sold. I haven't found a red sports car, no sudden love affair with skydiving, just a nervous system in recovery, basically. Like many women who I'm reading on Instagram and any of the platforms really, are feeling exhausted. I don't know if we're just carrying the fatigue of our mothers and grandmothers, or the idea that we were sold when we thought that we wanted equal rights and go in the workroom as well as clean up and have children and run the house and cut the grass and get the shopping in. And if any men are listening, this is not about women versus men and what women do in comparison to men. I'm a woman. I've worked 90% of women I've worked with, and midlife is a time, if you've had children, where kind of is an opportunity to review of your life. How it depends how old your children are, how much money they're still costing you, and what you want maybe going next. And women over 40 and 50 are massively in a different sort of stage of life in comparison to their mothers and grandmothers. I mean, it depends where you live, what class, race, culture, all of that thing, but there's just something in common that I'm reading on the platform. So I'm going to share my my take on it. So I'll say a little bit about me in a moment. So midlife, what is midlife? I don't know. If we live to 80, maybe midlife's 40. If we live to 70, midlife's potentially 35. And they are talking about, there's been some research out that even people in their 30s are having a sort of midlife crises. And there's so much going on in the world at the moment, or maybe there always was, but because the moment you start scrolling, you get all sorts of doom ideas in your feed that, if you do go on social media, as many of us do, it feels like there's a whole load of chaos and craziness going on at the moment. Anyway, so maybe we are just exhausted and fatigued after trying to work for 30 or 40 years to make ends meet. Or if we've been lucky enough to, I don't know, pay for a mortgage and pay the house off. And if you work for local authority or the NHS, a lot of people are retiring 55, and some still believe that it's worth to continue working and getting taxed double on their money and carry on doing that. So whatever your choices are, this is a no judgment zone. Whatever your life is, if you're happy with the way it is and the way it's turned out, that's amazing. Because that's what I'm all about. It's about how, as a woman in the Western world, I've been able to have that opportunity. So, I didn't buy a sports car. However, I had a car, actually, thinking about it now, I had a car accident in 2019 and I was just turning 50. And I didn't drive for, I think it was about 7 months, because I had like PTSD and severe stress whenever I got into a car, let alone trying to drive one. So I didn't drive. It was the first time since passing my test over 30 years ago that I hadn't drove. And then I decided, it sounds a bit morbid, I know, if I'm going to die on the road, might as well die in a car that I always wanted, not the car that I got that was sensible. And I did actually love the car that was mullered on the road, and missed it because it was almost new car that I'd had, and it was very pretty inside and shiny. And I decided, instead of spending another 12 or 14 grand on a car, that I think I spent £1,200 for my next car and absolutely loved it. And so I'm going off track a little bit, I know, but I'm just giving you some snapshots into how our thinking can start to change, regardless of whatever narrative you buy into. We're kind of aware, we get into our 40s, that we've done a large proportion of our career if we've wanted to work through the ranks or studying, or maybe if we've had children early on. And we'll start to review that, or even start to think about what do I want moving forward, and do I need to retrain or do something different? Or maybe we don't think about that until we get to 50. But I remember this morbid feeling sort of hitting me around 40, because I didn't want to get to that age, and many of us don't. It's like, it's just the inevitable, isn't it? As a human, you're given an age in which you're born, and you count it every year. Initially, you're excited for your birthday, and then you don't want to even acknowledge it. Anyway, I digressed, didn't I? I did buy a car, and it was a convertible, a little Peugeot. I think it's a 206. Always get them mixed up, 205, 206. Absolutely gorgeous, been really looked after, and I had a lot of fun in that. I thought I was only going to have it for about a year. And I was really scared when I did get back in the car, and I had to have a driving lesson. Well, I didn't have to, but I booked one. Because PTSD is a weird thing. It's hard to get your brain to not do these weird things when you get in a car. And anyway, so I didn't get the red sports car. Never really wanted a red sports car. I'm a tall woman, and they're a bit low. I've been in a Porsche, tried to drive it, and I just felt like my knees were around my ears, really. So many of us have worked hard. Maybe we've had a career. Maybe we've had a career full-time, looked after kids, husbands, partners, whatever. And so we might get to this phase of, I've got all these books that I'm meant to read and these courses I'm meant to do. And maybe my obsessions are strange, or I'm starting to move away from the things that I used to do. But something starts. And it's really interesting, because if you don't know who I am, I retrained. It was maybe my second or third career. I retrained when my kids were little, trained as a therapist, then did some coaching, NLP, hypnotherapy, and then at the end of 2019, I trained as a yoga teacher, meditation teacher, breath work. I'm really into holistic practice for our well-being, because I've practiced a lot of different things, initially driven by the fact I had really chronic depression after the birth of my first child. And we could argue that it was hormonal. Hormones definitely, make the waterworks come on quicker, as it did in my case. But there was a whole host of things going on. But at that time, because my mum had experienced, I didn't really know what she had because I was a kid, but she seemed to be getting quite a bit of Valium for depression. That's what I was aware of. They used to hand that out fairly easily to a lot of women. Housewives happy pills, apparently they were called. So where am I going with this? Yes, I could put that down to midlife. So I've decided to do this series on midlife and give you my take of it. And I'm probably, because I'm kind of doing a bit of writing at the moment, there's a possibility that I'll pop in and out of different ages and stages, because I trained as a therapist, and I'm really into psychology and spirituality, and looked at, not really had a deep dive into Freud, but an element of, we covered a lot of different models when I did my training. And now I'm quite into Jungian's idea of life phases we go through. But of course, life phases are different depending on what culture you've grown up with and then how you've evolved in that time. So that was 2019. 2016 was where I really started to ask questions. 2019, I got sideways knocked, and really did have to think about what I was doing, because the car accident massively affected my memory. I used to run, by that stage, I'd just been working for NHS England. And then I took a job at a university, and I'd only been there about, stop my mic, about 9 months. And was hosting, chairing project board meetings, and used to work with clinicians from about 18 hospital trusts, facilitate the meetings, visit people, look at reports, worked with commissioners on what they spend. And overnight, my memory was massively affected. I was in a lot of pain, and I'd was only working 3 days a week, and I was trying to get into work, and it was incredibly difficult. And if I didn't have a young, not that long out of university psychology degree, young lad, that was really keen to learn, and I was keen to direct because that's all I could do really. And it was a really tough time because it's hard enough when you know, have to try and make your life work every day, as most of us have. Um, but when you're hit by illness, whether it's chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, or a car accident that sort of literally wrecks the whole of your body, even though, I didn't end up in hospital. So, yeah, I've had to reassess several times in my life. I've gone through these different life phases, who I am, what I'm doing, what I can do, and and after you've had burnout a couple of times or lived in chronic stress, and then had a car accident, you've got an amygdala that fires off fairly easy, and we're learning more about the vagus nerve and the nervous system. And I know that yoga, meditation, and mindfulness have been massively healing to me. In fact, yoga probably helped me heal a lot. It was either that or just get stiffer and stiffer each day, really. So, like I said, I trained, retrained, qualified in '99. So over 25 years ago, qualified, but I've been in the field for about 28 now, I think, working with kids, with families, with professionals. And so I look at things through different lenses. So I am going to oscillate a little bit, probably. Um, and then my son went to university, and it's often a pivotal point for people when their kids leave home or go to university, because I did get to that stage, as a lot of parents do, especially now. Because I think it's, somebody said on a podcast the other day, 50% of adult children are living at home. I didn't realise it was that high. And so one son moved out. I thought he might be there forever, but he found a girlfriend, which was great, and he moved out. And my other son went to uni, so it was the first time. And people were like, oh, you're going to find it difficult. You're going to be on your own. And after about 3 months, because I thought maybe I will, and maybe I was lying to myself, but actually I did really enjoy having the house to myself and having that space. But in the process of him going to uni, because I live near London and he was living on the coast in Bournemouth. And I think I did encourage him to go and stay somewhere that was near the sea, because I love the sea. And I went and visited him about once a month, drove down there, and I started exploring. And it really gave me this sense of travel that I used to enjoy before I got married. I travelled around a lot in the UK, working in hotels, and it reignited that. So at this time, I think that was around 2016, 2017, I've left a job that was great. And then in the last year, we were taken over by consultants and a trust and all this stuff that can go on in local authorities. Um, so I kind of knew my days were numbered. And that's when I started to think, what do I want to do in the coming years? Um, so he'd gone to uni, and I started going to visit him, and he gave me a tablet, one of his old, can't remember who made it. I think it was a Sony tablet, and it took really amazing pictures, and I started posting them online. And then it just activated a passion for taking pictures. And then it got to the point where I was trying to take pictures of people on doing windsurfing, and realized the scope of it didn't take them that well. And so that moved me into actually buying a proper camera, a DSLR, and starting to try my hand at photography. So at that time, I really got into the photography. I was going to visit him, really liked the travel, and I was working 4 days a week now, because in 2016, I wanted to work less days. It was quite unusual back then to work from home, definitely unusual. To work online was unusual, and a few people were going down to 4 days. A lot of people didn't work Friday, and by 2018, I went down to 3 days. That's when I started working at the university. So, so midlife was evolving consciously for me, in a way, of kids are grown up. These are markers, aren't they? You put a lot into when your family are growing up, and you spend your time running around from, to your job, dropping the kids off at school, come back, making them dinner, getting the shopping in, all of that, to this sense of I could feel this widening out of freedom I started to experience, as well as a thought process of, will I be able to continue in this field? Where what will I do next? Because there is a difference. There's certainly a difference with who I am now, how I feel, and how I felt when I was taking on projects before. I could run 5 or 6 projects, no problem. I had the energy and probably lived on adrenaline most of the time. But, I was at that level of active focus until I started to feel that sort of slowing down. And certainly when I had the car accident, it was overnight. So he goes to uni and I'm having some freedom and I'm starting to think about this. And the reason I'm highlighting this now is I think we all start to become conscious at some stage, but there wasn't anything online or books or anything. And in fact, I was not interested in really thinking about midlife. I just was thinking about, oh, great, how can I start to bring some balance in my life? What can I do with that bit of time that's opening up, that 4th day, that 5th day? I wasn't working Fridays and I wasn't working Mondays. How can I use that time rather than just using it to tidy up the house and get the shopping in? So initially I just thought, oh, I'd really like to write a blog. I'd like to put what I've learned in one place, so that, because I was into all these different approaches and people that I was coming into contact with were very new to the spiritual sort of dimension of yoga and meditation, mindfulness, and holistic approaches and healing and sound healing, all the things that I was doing, as well as the CBT and the different training and psychology that we used in my clinical work. So I felt like I wanted to put that information on a website. And as my website host guy that looks after it for me realised, it was almost like I was doing a mental dump of everything that I know. And of course, that since we've had all these apps developed, these ideas have really spread, about the value of yoga and Pilates. And now we're not talking about yoga, we're talking about movement and breath work and mindfulness and taking time out, mindset work. And it's great because this information was held in the echelons of the clinical rooms. Me and my colleagues will talk about these things, but well-being wasn't a word. Well-being became part of the vocabulary really for us around 2014, and that was when public health came into local authority, and the whole focus was on the population's health and the programs and projects we needed to create, and mental health was a part of that. So the research started coming through about mental health and well-being, because they are different. They are symbiotic, but they are also different. So for me, I had my professional sphere, a sphere as a parent, and the sphere opening up of how did I want to use and enjoy my time. So I've worked with lots of different people over the years, professionals in the industry, teachers, schools, GPs, psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, therapists, educational psychologists, lots of other clinicians. I've ran teams and services and are really familiar. I've probably worked with thousands of people now, because in one of the services that I ran with my staff, when we were really trying to get it to a sort of gold standard, I did every assessment with them, every new referral. We used to do about 7 a week, as well as I'd help them out in others. So I'd always do the first meeting with them for the first 2 years. And we had about 700 to 1,000 referrals a year into our service, and I worked there in that particular service for 8 years. So I'm really familiar with the research, how to access research, the issues of research, and not all research is credible because there are big business behind orchestrating things in society so that we can persuade people to think in a particular way, and we're becoming more aware of that, as well as evaluations and how to learn about what's effective. And now 2019, I had that time out. We all know about 2020, 2021. And towards the end of 2021, I started really thinking about, okay, my contract came to an end at the university. I took on some corporate work. I was doing that, and then the end of 2021, started thinking about what did I want to do besides that. And at the end of 29, I trained as a yoga teacher, and while we had COVID, I was teaching that online every week to different groups of women for connection, for talking about what was going on, how we managed the anxiety and the craziness that was going on in the world. Um, and I decided that I wanted to get back out there and try going to festivals, but well-being festivals. I like well-being festivals. I'm not that big into going to intense alcohol venues, and I'd been going to mind, body, and spirit events for about a decade, um, and thought, yeah, no, might be nice to go and teach some yoga, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But that was around sort of late 21, 22 is where I started to test out those ideas. 23, 24, 25. I've been doing teaching at festivals, yoga meditation workshops, running online groups, seeing clients one-to-one, and did some of the corporate work that I did, and bought a camper van in 2024, because my whole premise is, what is it that lights us up? We get to a certain phase in our life, and we don't want to wait until we wake up one morning and realize the kids are grown up and we're bored now and we're not enjoying our job, or we're part-time, or our friendship groups have all changed, because that happens. And there is lots of change and things happening at the moment for people, and they're struggling to deal with it, and there's a lot of people who feel lonely that because their friendship groups have changed, or they've got divorced, or they've separated, and they're not really plugged into any particular groups or things. And so it's good to address it from my perspective, but also kind of what I see with my clients and what I'm seeing coming through the research. So, like I said, I've taught at festivals, sat in boardrooms, held space for breakdowns that turned into breakthroughs. And like you, I'm curious about where my life continues to move and the bigger questions. So the only thing I would say as a caveat is I know a lot of stuff, but I don't really know anything. Most of what we know is theories until we learn. That's what research is. Until we learn another theory. There are universal truths. But does our universe and our world operate like this in different universes? I don't know. But I think as I move forward in my life, I'm just intrigued into how I experience life. How do I experience it on a day to day, whether it's the so called mundane of walking to the shop and who I might meet, sitting in the coffee shop for hours on my laptop and integrating with people there, or when I go swimming, when I go to the gym, or when I'm in my camper van. And that's what I love about what I do, is the day to day mundane that can also be really special. So this isn't about fixing anything. It's not trying to make anyone feel better and happier. Although I do create programs and run workshops and see people because maybe they want to feel happier and more inspired and satisfied. But sometimes, like what I'm doing at the moment, I don't want to do anything. I have days now where I'm very happy to just have a very chill day. I have very creative days, and then I have days where I do very little. And it's interesting because it's come up a lot in conversations with clients over the last month, in particular, in a coaching session I had today, where she's also worked out that she has these fluctuations. She can be really bang on creative and churn out loads of work, and then 3 or 4 days later not even connect with it. And I go through those cycles, and it's the kind of creative cycle that creatives go through. But as a woman, it's hard to work out sometimes, especially when you hit potentially perimenopause, menopause, whatever the hell we're calling it. Whether or not it's hormones playing out, because I've used the Dexcom to measure my blood sugar, but I haven't got anything that measures what's actually happening with hormones at any one stage. But I know that I get days where I'm intensely tired and heavy. And if I do some yoga, breath work, and meditation, I can shift a lot of that. But I still don't feel vibrant. And mentally, I just feel like there's not much there. And I get other days, like now, I'm actually recording this at 12 o'clock at night. I'm awake. I'm wide awake because my sleeping has changed. I don't like working in the mornings anymore. I used to get up for years, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, bang on, throw out loads of work, write reports and everything before I even got into work, or at 8 o'clock at night was when my brain switched on. So there are things going on that I can't quite explain at the moment, but I'll assume that hormones have got something to do with it because I imagine they would, because that's what we're told. That's what the science tells us. Because all my previous blood tests didn't show anything, but it has been about 18 months since I looked at any of them, and I know they're a snapshot in time. So I'm finding the heat in my body's changing, and I can be extremely thirsty some days. I can go weeks without eating any sugar, and then at the weekend, I had a whole day. Didn't help because my son bought Quality Street. I don't even really eat chocolate. I'm not that bothered about sweet things. I got rid of that about 15 years ago. And I had a day where I thought, I think I ate half the box. I haven't done that since about 5 Christmases ago. And then the next day it was fine, and I try not to do the whole self-guilt trip, because that's what I say to clients. If you're gonna do it, enjoy it, savor it loads, have it with a glass of milk. I like chocolate and milk. But I'm really, meandering. So I'm sort of sharing a little bit about my thought process, but I'll give you a bit of a story as to what was going on for me. Like I said, I didn't wanna think about midlife. I didn't wanna think about getting older, and about, I think it was 2023, I was going to Mind, Body and Spirit events every year as a participant, and this time I contacted them and said I'd be interested in being one of their volunteers and helping out. Anyway, you get allocated a space at these venues. It's at Olympia in London, it's huge, so they have helpers doing all sorts, and it was fun. And we just started to see this new trend. We'd moved out of wellbeing, which was 2014, 15, 16, 17. And now people were talking about midlife. Research was coming through about women in the workforce in their midlife years and what employers need to know and all about that. And it was interesting because I was a bit switched off to it. But I also knew that some women have it really hard to physiologically go through torture with their periods, with the menopause, all sorts of different things, um, with brain fog and depression, and just have a really hard time of it. But personally, for me, I just wasn't really connecting with it. And anyway, they said to me, "Can you help out on one of the stages for midlife?" And I was a bit perplexed. I was like, "What?" I was a bit sort of insulted at the same time, because I was like, "Why have you put me on midlife? What, is that because I'm older now?" Anyway, it was great because I listened to all the women speakers, and what was beautiful is the version of midlife, and this is why I was kind of rejecting it, that I had. I grew up in Manchester, and I remember being about 15, 16, 17. I was going to clubs. You could get in anywhere back then. And seeing girls that were over 30 in the clubs. And do you know when you're really young and you just think everyone's really old? And I remember seeing these women on the TV programs. We didn't have really any strong, fun, nice, independent role models, women. We had these women that were caricatures of battle axes, in these soaps, or there's quite a few soaps from that time period that are back on the TV now, like, um, oh gosh, it's gone out of my head now. Um, the titles will come to in a moment. I'm having a moment. Last of the Summer Wine. So it's 4 men who are just wandering around the Yorkshire moors doing nothing. I think they're retired, and they've got these strong female characters in there that are gossipy and nasty and rude, and so these were the visuals that we had growing up, and there were other soaps like that. The Good Life that demarcates, the upper classes and the working classes, and the attitudes between the two. So we had TV series that sort of replicated in a way of how I saw life when I was growing up. Not exactly. It was only when I watched Shameless If anyone is from the UK listening to this and you watch Shameless, you'll realise, I actually lived near estates like that, and we had those characters. So when Shameless come on, I was absolutely satisfied, like blown away. I was like, wow, because we could see, knew of those characters. We had similar characters in Coronation Street. My brother lived in a terrace house, my dad did. The rest of it didn't really relate to. We didn't spend our lives in a corner pub where we've grown up. My mum didn't drink, which made you a bit weird anyway when you're growing up, because everyone was like a hardened drinker. So midlife was parked somewhere, related to these aspects. It's negative. You get older, you get frumpy, you wear weird clothes, you have rollers in your hair, you look old, and life just didn't look like fun. So that was the image I had. So the first question here is, what messages did you receive about midlife, and where did they come from? Was it TV shows? Was it the women in your family? You might have had really positive messages. So when I was helping out at the Mind, Body and Spirit Festival, and I was listening to these women, one of them was a doctor, and they were talking about how midlife is like a breakthrough for a woman, that, it's about her now being able to reclaim and connect with her own individuality and find out who she really is under the role of being a woman, a sister, a daughter, outside of religion, outside of spirituality, outside of all this. It's like, who are we? What do we want? And what do we want moving forward? It's an opportunity to review where we've been and what do we want moving forward. So it was a real positive spin on it. And it was really, really intriguing. There was a few people that had wrote their books, and they're focusing on the usual stuff like diet and what it was like to go through the menopause, and even the amount of women, me included, that didn't really know that much about it. Because I think, sometimes you don't want to look at something, that you push it beyond the door, don't you, until you're forced to look at it. And every ache and pain I've got, because I've had burnout a couple of times and then I had a car accident, I've associated all my aches and pains with that. For other women, they might associate all their aches and pains with menopause, but it's not always the case. Sometimes something else is going on. So that was the beginning of, that was 2023. And then in 2024, I was working online with another lady, and we were running panels. So we'd have a panel of like a nutritionist, a healer, a yoga teacher, on different topics around mental health and well-being. And one of the weeks it was around midlife. So it was a really good opportunity to ask other women about what they felt about midlife and their own experience of entering midlife and the menopause, if they were, and the messages they had, and how that was infused in their work and the clients that they had. Because, when you work as a therapist, holistic practitioner, often what we're experiencing, we might start to meet clients who are just about to go through those journeys themselves. So so that was great. We had the panel of that, and I started doing some research, and I started looking at what the research was saying in the UK and America and in different cultures. Because, in some cultures it's celebrated as you get older and wiser, and we've got so much to share with our young ones and the way that we can support the village and the community. But in Western culture, we've got these ideas about what it means to be a woman and how you should look, and your makeup and your figure and all of that kind of thing. So different views, different cultures, but in particular in the workplace, and what is often going on for women and what's going on in marriage and things like that. So I did the panel and started to dive into the research, and I put quite a few things on my website about midlife. And then it kind of got parked a little bit, and it's kind of coming to the forefront again, because I've listened to a few podcasts recently, more to do with how to prevent getting things like diabetes, and about fasting, about how we struggle, this idea of struggling to lose weight. And I remember why I put on weight, because I was quite slim for a few years, because I used to work hard and go to the gym all the time. So I didn't put on weight, but I used to eat really good. I didn't have to think really about what I was eating. And I'd always managed that balance. But the reason I sort of put on weight is when I started having a social life again in 2011, 12, and 13, because we were out every weekend, and then I started drinking wine, and it's quite easy for things to creep on. And then after my car accident, I couldn't get to the gym, couldn't swim or anything, and so doing yoga doesn't really burn calories, unless you're doing hardcore yoga. So with the same diet, and you end up not doing any exercise, then of course, your body can't burn it off in the same way. And my dad was diabetic and my son is diabetic. And so there is something that runs through our family around either how we manage glucose, sugar in the body. There's something, because we've all had these weird symptoms. So fasting I've done on and off over the last few years, and I've had times, and I'm going to be doing another one soon, because I've had some different infections in the body, and I thought, you know what, maybe it's time. They recommend, and the recommendations always change, to do a fast at least once a year. One of the doctors, I think I was watching Diary of a CEO, he had a couple of people on there that were absolutely brilliant, but also how it helps, when we've got brain fog and our hormones are all in disarray and all these kind of things. So I'm not really going to talk about that because that's not my expert area, but I wanted to share just how all of these things are intermingled, like how your style changes, how you start thinking differently, or maybe you do need to start thinking differently. And then, like I said, the clients I'm coming into contact with, because the women I'm working with, range from, say, like, I think the youngest is about 24, to women in their 50s hitting on 60. And how the younger ones, the 20, 30-year-olds, are tracking and are aware more of their cycles and whether or not hormones are affecting them and their moods. Because the other thing I looked at when I was training was feminist psychology. And because I was looking at how women's problems, inverted commas, have been, and mental health has been clinicalized in a way, that years ago, if you went to the doctors and you were depressed, you could easily get Valium, and lots of women were bored housewives because you weren't expected to work, you were expected to be at home with the kids. And for me, there's nothing more soul destroying if you're not actually following your soul path, if you're not following like your actual innate nature and blueprint, and go beyond the roles. And I'm going to cover all these things. This is meant to be an introduction, by the way, but I've clearly gone off tangent a little bit. So this is about not fixing, not making you happier and healthier, but you might get happier and healthier as a result of it. There's no guarantees. This is just about me pulling back the layers and thinking about what have we outgrown, the roles, the expectations, and finding more underneath that. And if I can share some of my ideas and journey about that, and it sparks an idea in you, just gets you motivated or inspired, then brilliant. But at the same time, rest and relaxation is really important, because when I'm still hard on myself, okay, and I realize I'm doing that more and more, because it's very hard to become aware of what you're thinking and what kind of thoughts you have going through your head if you're busy all the time. If you're working for 40 to 60 hours a week and you're running around the shops and you've got kids or grandkids and the car needs fixing, blah, 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 all of that stuff. It's very, thinking and reflecting is a luxury. So the more you practice meditation and mindfulness, the more you're aware of actually what's going through your head. And I've become even more aware recently as I've slowed down. Well, it was a forced slowdown because, like I said, I bought a camper van in 2024. And I was in Scotland a few weeks ago. I'd managed to get up there, and I'll talk about that trip. But basically, my van broke down. It's with a mechanic, and I've had no transport for the last month. And in a way, I didn't mind too much at the beginning, because I really feel like after moving around a lot that I wanted to rest. And it was a deep rest. It was like in my bones kind of rest that I wanted. So, and I was actually saying that to my son today, I said, actually, this time, autumn, I don't look forward to winter necessarily. But I thought, no, I feel like I just need to land and just be still, because I can now, because I have these gaps of time. And so I was kind of reflecting on I get days where I think, you've not done that much. You should be doing more, that internal dialogue. And I have to say, Mel, you were working like anything up until 2022. I've only just slowed down in the last 3 years. And even then, because I slowed down in days in 2018 and 2020 when I went down to 3 days. But in 2020, when I left my last job, I picked up a project. And initially, I was only doing about 14 hours a week. And then because I created and designed a project, I almost went full time again. And it was a project, it was linked with domestic abuse. So it had a lot of sort of stress around it, because you carry a lot of risk. So my nervous system was jangled for like 18 months doing that. And I was very aware of that because I'd left that sort of very jangled stress nervous system in 2016 and then repeated it. So when I left there, I thought, I'll have some time out. And I did. I had a few months, and then I started slowly picking up client work. But it takes a while, and I've had this conversation with other people. When you slow down or stop working, most people I know are just cutting their hours. They're retiring and then maybe working 2 or 3 days a week. It takes a while for you to be able to just stop having a go at yourself and saying, you're not doing that much. Like guilty because you can't be bothered taking the washing in, or you want to. I've had a few days where I've wanted to lay around and watch TV. I've barely watched TV in the last few years. And I'm like, Mel, you've just been on the road for like nearly 4 weeks. The van broke down and you had your nervous system jangled, and it was great and it was challenging and resilience building, but stressful at the same time. And so all these thoughts that come through, so I have to talk to myself. I have to sit back and go, it's okay, you can rest today. Stop pushing yourself, stop forcing it. Even with the creative stuff I do, it's like, I've got this course I'm designing, I should be recording it and doing it now. So I want to share how I view things so that you may resonate with some of this. So there's so many layers to what does it mean to be a woman, what culture, race, roles, conditioning, family dynamics, messages we received about ourselves from society, where we're at in our life, career, kids, no kids, relationships, no relationships, breaking up, divorce, getting married. Wherever you are, there is a common strand, that there is a narrative around when you start hitting your 50s and what life can look like, or what other people think your life should look like your kids. So in this series, I'll be talking about transitions, maybe hormone, soul calling, because I've been creating a course called How to Create a Soul-Led Life, which I didn't realize I was doing. I've been doing it for a few years, but it just came to me recently that I was. And that's how my brain kind of works. I do things, I don't know what it's called, I don't quite know what I'm doing. And people say, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm kind of doing this. And then all of a sudden it becomes real and relevant, and I know what to call it. Grief, creativity, invisibility, reinvention, and why supermarket lighting and car lights are offensive after 40. And I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but there's one shopping brand company that I cannot go in because of the lights that they use. And I'm really struggling now. I was thinking this. I've noticed this ever since I worked at the university. I've got light sensitivity anyway, but there's a certain point in the day where the sun shines right through my window where my laptop I work. And it blinds me. I cannot think. It's like someone's shining a torch in my eyes. So there are experiences that we have and sounds that we like and don't like and feelings that we have that we may not be paying attention to because we're too busy. We've got too much mental dialogue going on or whatever. So sometimes it's just me. Sometimes it'd be about bringing out the voices of other people who've walked the path, because I'm hoping to do some stuff with some of the other women I've met in the last few years and trying to make it a bit more human and less lonely. And even though, I work as therapist and a coach, we're not perfect and we make mistakes. And at the same time, we're coming into contact with human condition all the time. And all I know is that there are things that unite us as women, and there are lots of things that make us different. And it helps when you can resonate with what's going on with someone and just even hear what it's like for them. So this introduction is really just thinking about, how do you define who you are? Where are you in your life? Have you even thought about midlife? And what messages did you have about midlife? Or maybe you're starting to think about it now. So if you're in that place and something's stirring, even just a whisper, this is a space for you. Bring a cup of tea, bring your tired body or your body full of it. Maybe you're like one of my friends. I've got a couple of friends. Oh my goodness, the energy that they have. I've got one friend who can just tackle a garden that looks like a jungle within a day with a machete or a scythe, whatever you call it. Another friend who could do rebounding all week, and I watch them and I get tired. I perceive myself, and I don't know if it's a wrong perception, as someone that's just never really had a great deal of energy. But then I look back and I go, well, you did, because Mel, you were studying, you had 2 small children. One had diabetes, one was sick, in and out of hospital all the time, and you were getting into work and you were shopping and cleaning, paying the bills. So again, it's like I have to check in with myself. So my personal check-ins might help you do your own personal check-ins and stop tying ourselves in knots and getting really stressed about the little things, and learn how to, like what I've been saying over the past few weeks, of saying, Mel, it's okay. Because I was like, I was kind of relieved when they closed the swimming pool down, because it was like, Mel, when I get into exercise, it's really bizarre. It's like, right, it's Monday, you need to go swimming. Wednesday, you need to go swimming. Friday, you're doing your yoga on Tuesday. And I've tried to stick to this routine because it really helped me heal from the car accident, helped me a lot. But our routines change and our bodies change, and what we need some days is different other days. And it's quite difficult for me to work out, and like many of us, do I need all these vitamins? Do I need to swim, just be still, sleep, have more sleep, less sleep? So I feel like a bit of my crazy's coming out now. So hopefully you've listened to some of my previous podcasts. You'll know that I do podcasts with people. I've got on my YouTube page the Change, Grow and Transform program, which is a 30-day program for anyone. I'm going to create another one for January, so I'm sort of preempting that. But I've got on my playlist level 1 and level 2. And the concept of 30 days is that you do something every day that connects you with this idea of learning a topic and doing a few journal questions and learning about yourself, so you can start to see and understand what's going on for you in the answering of this. And then that helps you come up with a plan as to how you want to create a life that you love even more, or just love in general. Okay, so yeah, the great cosmic plot twist, because how is it going to be? Who am I going to be turning into? What's going to happen to me over the next few years? Who knows? So hopefully you've liked what you've listened to so far. So on Spotify, it'll be under midlife, and then whatever the topic is that I cover. And on YouTube, the category is a bit different, but we've got playlists which will be under midlife. So I look forward to sharing more with you, and some of that may include some of the journeys I've been on. I've no idea what's happening next, because I don't know. My van is very sick, or just a little bit sick, so I'm a bit sad about that, because my van is my temple, my studio, my home on the road, my explorer, my sanity, my space, my chill, and all of that. So yes, who knows what's going to happen next. So great to meet you. Tune in, like, subscribe, press the buttons. It really helps me grow what I'm growing now. Thank you for listening. Hi everyone, this is Mel, and I haven't decided yet whether this is video or audio or both. But I'm here to tell you about my new series. I'm going to cover, I've done it a few times over the last few years, but it's become sort of